Hello there, and welcome back to What the Dog. My name is Katie. I am the owner and trainer here at For Pete's Sake Dog Training, and this podcast is all about what your dog's doing, why they're doing it, and can we, quote, fix it. I try and keep my podcast pretty short, simple, sweet, and to the point because I know we all have busy lives, and most of us who are dog parents just would like answers. And I'm here to hopefully give you some. This podcast does not have a video to it. Most of my other ones do because I'm multitasking at the same time. So, with that, today we're going to talk about growling. Why do our dogs growl? And for some of you, you're going to right off the bat say, hey, I know why they growl, they're talking. What more do I need to know? But there's a lot of different situations where some of us may think growling is appropriate versus not appropriate. And for me, it's not necessarily the situation, it's how intense that growling gets and what other body language cues and what other communication the dog is doing. So when you say, yeah, growling is communication, you are correct. Growling is communication. And there is this whole communication ladder that there are images online that you can go find. And it actually goes over a lot of body language with dogs and the body language they use to communicate. So a lot of times when we think of dog communication, we think of growling and barking. We think very vocal. But dogs communicate with us and with other dogs primarily through body language and not necessarily through vocals. And they communicate based on how they're feeling in situations. So whether that's happiness, anxiety, excited, whatever it may be, dogs are communicating primarily through their body. And I'm going to actually talk about body language on my next episode. So if you're interested in that, make sure you check in with me next week for that episode. And again, I'll actually have a video, so I may be able to add to that as well. But if you're just listening to me on the body language, I'll try and be as descriptive as I can. But for growling, I've actually heard a lot of people tell me that they tell their dog no when they growl, or depending on what they're growling at, like if they're growling at a person in their household who maybe sits next to the dog on the couch, if they're on a walk. I see it all the time actually. Dogs growling or barking on walks and their owners are just telling them no. And to me, like that's honestly, it's frustrating to see that because one, you probably haven't taught your dog what the word no means. And most of us think no just means don't do what you're doing, right? Which is very general for a dog. And I actually have a podcast episode on that topic. So if you want to dive into that more, go scroll back to my previous episodes. And I do have one about what no really means. And what we do to our dogs when I want to say, quote, punish, but when we do punish them for growling or for using their communication, that actually suppresses their mindset of using that communication. And most often, the dog will escalate their communication and it will get worse because they say, well, growling, I have this negative association with growling now. So instead of just growling, maybe I'll snap or I'll bite, So we don't want to punish our dogs for growling. I actually welcome growling because it tells me that my dog is uncomfortable about something. And most likely, 99% of the time, honestly, like, a lot, probably 100, but I don't want to be one of those people. 99.9% of the time, the dog is actually giving us body language cues before they growl. We're just oblivious. We haven't educated ourselves enough, or we're not paying attention enough to recognize those body language cues before the growl comes. So, again, growling is communication, and I would welcome it. I don't want to punish it because that will just lead to my dog reacting on their emotions in a more what we would call negative way. And again, that's how dogs communicate. So it's like people can communicate through yelling And usually there are things that are coming before they start yelling. They don't just yell out of nowhere usually, even if it may be something subtle in their brain that's going on, but maybe they're showing some body language of tense body language. They're tapping their feet, picking their nails, biting their nails, picking up their skin, whatever it may be. And then it's like everything kind of bottles up and the tip of the iceberg comes and they yell. Very similar to dogs. Some of them will go through that a lot faster than others and maybe not have as much patience. So I want to dig into a little bit more situational, because you may also be saying, yeah, but when my dog does this, I don't want it to growl at my grandchildren. I don't want it to growl at the neighbors when they come over, or when someone tries to pet them through our fence, or when we're on walks. I don't want them to do that. Okay. If you don't want your dog to growl in certain situations, you need to work with a trainer on getting them more comfortable about those situations. Because right now, their growling is telling you that they are not okay. And most of us think that dogs should just be okay with our everyday lives and anything that comes up while they live with us, that dogs should just absorb our lives. They are animals. They are animals. I know they're not all strays and running wild and free, but they are still animals and they do not speak English. And this is their instinctual form of communication. And like I said, I'll say it a million times, we're probably missing majority of that communication before they growl. So if you are someone who has a dog who growls when kids run up to them, when someone sits on the couch with them, let's talk about guests. People are coming over. They are, in a way, somewhat unfamiliar for the dog, whether they're unfamiliar because they don't come over every single day. Maybe they come over once a week or a couple times a week. And they may know them fairly well, but they are not their people because they're not living with them on a daily basis. Anyone who is not living with you on a daily basis, I don't care if they come over every other day, they are not, quote, their people. And I'm not saying dogs won't growl at their people, they will, but the likelihood can be increased if the people are, quote, unfamiliar or not in their daily life as part of their daily schedule. So thinking about when guests are coming over, we want to make your dog more confident and more comfortable with guests. And a lot of that is through positive associations. Yes, treats are involved, play is involved. Touching, I kind of hesitate on because, to be honest, a lot of dogs tolerate our touching in different ways, our petting. And if your dog is tolerating petting from you, honestly, you guys, I see it all the time when I watch a dog be pet even by its own owners and it's showing body language that it's not super comfortable with that. I've made a TikTok video of me touching my dog's head, like going to pet him on the top of his head. And they're very subtle cues. I don't pet my dog on his head because he's giving me cues that he's uncomfortable. Little mouth lick, his ears are tucked back, his eyes are watching my hand go above his head, and sometimes he even ducks away a little bit. I don't move fast. I've never hit my dog, but petting on the top of the head is, for a lot of dogs, they tolerate it and they don't necessarily really like it. And I see it all the time, even with owners petting their own dogs. Their dogs are showing them body language that they're tolerating it, but they're not loving it. So if you have a dog who doesn't really like to be pet on their head and they tolerate it with you, but some person that they kind of know is starting to pet them on their head, that's going to make them even more uncomfortable with that situation, right? So you may get some growling or, something that's going to say, hey, why are you growling at this stranger petting your head, but when I pet your head, you're okay, quote, okay with it. So that's a great example of how dogs can be, quote, I'm air quoting a lot here, they can be fine with things that you do with them, but maybe not with people, even if they see them fairly frequently. Guests can be just generally give dogs a little bit more anxiety. I have a free webinar on reactivity. So if you do have a dog that is highly barky, growly, honestly, even I go over in it the 5 responses that dogs have to anxiety. And people will be surprised that fawning, where dogs roll over on their back, is one. That is an anxious body language cue. fidgeting, overexcitedly jumping, pacing. So there's a lot in there. I go over all of those. So I'm not talking about just the dogs who bark and growl. There's a lot of it. Has a lot of great information in it. But we can help build a positive association with those guests. And I do not recommend that the guest gives your dogs treats. Like, that's the positive association, the sole positive association. I don't recommend that. That can be part of it. But what you have is conflict. When your nervous dog, who normally growls at people coming in the door, now is in conflict of, oh, but they have a treat and I kind of want a treat. So I'm going to go over to them because I want that food, but I'm still really nervous. And when your guest hands them the treat and then tries to pet them, your guest is now more at risk for being bit because their nervous dog, I don't want to say they were forced to come into their space, but it wasn't solely their choice without any type of, oh, I'm going to get treats, so I better go over there. I let dogs come to me on their own terms. And then generally, I'm building a positive association with guests, usually with space and with chew bones or lick toys or something that the dog can do that is naturally helping them calm down in the same space as the guest, but not necessarily interacting with the guest. And then we'll move closer to interacting. And it just really depends on the dog, how much time that takes. My dog, I had someone living with us, and by about day 3.5, he finally was fairly okay with that person. And by day 4 into 5, like he was pretty good. I never tested that person coming into the house without us there because I didn't want to do that yet. But it just really depends. Other dogs, you're like, oh yeah, someone could just walk in my house and they're fine with them for the most part, right? But we're talking about growling. We're not talking about happy-go-lucky dogs. So with your guests, you want to build positive associations. If you have a dog who maybe, my parents' dog did this all the time, he would be laying on the couch, and as soon as someone would sit next to him, he'd growl. Now, there are many reasons as to why he probably did that. When he started doing that, he was in his senior ages, and he was a senior. And as dogs get older, they tend to have more pain and more discomfort. And that is, in dogs, a sign of, quote, weakness. And usually in the wild, weaker dogs get picked off. And so you tend to see dogs who are in pain and discomfort be more reactive about their body space. It's almost like their personal bubble gets bigger as they get older because they have lower body confidence because they hurt or whatever it may be. And so they're going to try and keep people away from them a little more. So they do become more growly. And building positive associations with that can work as well. But honestly, when we start getting into situations like that, in any anxiety case, I always recommend people going to their vet and getting a full exam. Your dog may need some joint supplements. Your dog may have, honestly, there's a lot of connection between gut health and anxiety. Your dog may be on the wrong food, and something as simple as that could help them. Not all the time, but gut health, pain. Older dogs, we get masses and they may be internal versus external. So there's a lot of reasons as to why your dog may be growling, but again, accept it as communication and then learn from it. And then we can take the next steps from there, whether that's we need to get you on more medications from the vet because you are, not feeling the best, or there's a problem that we need to solve at the vet, versus building those positive associations with the situations as well. So again, to repeat myself tenfold, because I do that a lot. You guys will realize I repeat myself a lot because I want to make sure you get the message. The message is, do not punish growling. Do not punish growling, because you are very much risking that dog to escalate their communication. And take the communication as okay, what's going on? How can I help you? Right? Growling is 100% acceptable because the dog is telling us something. Now, like I said, next time I'm going to talk about dog body language. So this week I'm going to work on maybe putting like a little PowerPoint or something together. I'm going to try and figure that out if I could get some visuals on here for you guys to be able to look at during the podcast too. But like I said, I will try and even just verbally describe body language to you. But there's a lot, and most of us are missing a lot of it. And I'm not saying you have to like monitor your dog 24/7 just to understand what they're feeling, but in these situations, it's nice to be able to look at our dog and say, oh, I didn't know you felt that way about this. For example, petting your dog, like me petting my dog on the head. I'm like, okay, he doesn't really like it as much as I thought all dogs did. And in reality, most dogs actually just tolerate it. They don't really care for it. I'm not saying they hate it. I'm saying they don't care for it. There's a difference. And we should respect all of them. So I hope that helps. Like I said, if you have a dog who is very vocal and you want some more assistance and help, feel free to reach out to me. And I start every potential client with a free consultation call. I do not require you to sign up on the call. We can just talk over things. It's about 30 minutes. And then I can work in person private sessions in the Des Moines to Indianola, Iowa area. And then if you don't live here, we can do virtual sessions as well. And I always recommend, like, if you would rather do, personal private sessions in your area, we can still talk and I can help you on what to look for in a dog trainer, because there's a lot of different stuff out there. So, it will just help you get some more information, because the internet can be a overstimulating place. So, if you want to do that, my website is www.furpetesake, that's F-U-R, Pete's, P-E-T-E-S, sake, S-A-K-E, yes, there's 2 S's there, training.com. So furpetesaketraining.com. You can find me on Facebook, For Pete's Sake Dog Training, and I'm trying to think where else. Oh, email. If you want to email me, you can. But honestly, if you go to my website, that'll have a lot, and there's buttons everywhere on booking a consultation call. So we can chat away. And reactivity is something that I am very well versed in. My own dog is reactive, and I'd say about 70% of my clients right now are reactive, whether that's walking, guests coming to the house, reactive towards other dogs in the house. We get that a lot. So thank you for joining me again today. Like I said, next week, stick around and we're going to talk about body language, and it should be fantastic. Thank you for your patience on no video this week, and I will see you guys next time.